All right, take two. I think this is finally working now. All right, this is a video that goes with lesson 1 A.1. And this is the Nearpod activity with translating expressions. So this will be a little different if you weren't in class, but this will give you a feel for what actually happened within class. So what we did was, as a group, we worked out what words represent different symbols in class. So when we see this symbol here, we asked students what they thought words might be. So for example, it might be something like plus. We can have add, we can have increase by, quite a few things, more than. We also looked at what we could use if it was like a word problem. So for example, if you were at a bank, if you had, say, $100 in the account and you deposited $20, you'd have to think about what does that word deposit actually mean? So that means that you're adding $20 into your account. So we looked at examples like this. Students came up with suggestions and then we placed them up on the board so people could see. And that might be something that's worth you actually pausing the video for and trying just to see for yourself. How many of those words can you think of for yourself? We did the same with the subtract symbol. We did the same for multiplication. And we did the same for division. And then at the end, and this is probably the important part. So this is a summary of some of the words that we can use. It's not a completely definitive list. For example, it doesn't have that word deposit in there. And some of these we might not necessarily see. I don't think I've particularly seen the in all word used on any questions, but certainly that would be a good example. Now, certainly a couple of popular ones. Sum is a very important word. That's probably the most important word for this section for addition. And total is a good one as well. Like when you go to the store, once they've added all the items together, they'll actually say your total is this one. So I think that's definitely a good one. Increased by, more or more than is certainly another one as well. And more than is a turnaround word, and we'll see exactly what that means in a little bit. For subtraction, difference is the most important word, followed by less than. And less than was one of those words that appeared on the pre-assessment, and it's one of those that's also a turnaround word as well. So if it says something like 5 less than a number, it doesn't mean 5 minus x. It actually means x minus 5. You have to turn it around or switch it around, however you feel about it. Fewer than, certainly for my group, I noticed a few people recognize less than, but they didn't recognize fewer than. Fewer than would also be a turnaround word as well, so you'd have to switch that one around. Decreased by, gave away, and if one of the students also in class mentioned the fact you could have withdraw. If we had deposit as an example for bank, you could have withdraw as an example of subtracting a number. Multiplication, product is certainly the most common one. Times is probably the one we use certainly the most in elementary school. And then perhaps a lot of people might have forgotten the ones for specific multiplications. So timesing by 2 is double or twice, and multiplying 3 times would be triple. And obviously you could have quadruple and things like that as well. At this point as well, multiplied obviously would be an obvious one, and factor, which we'll talk about certainly in another unit as well. When we look at factors of numbers, it would be things that multiply together to make that number. And for divide, quotient is the most important one, I think. Share is certainly a good one for a word problem. If you're sharing out cookies between a certain number of people, you would be dividing them. And then there's specific divisions. 1/2 means you're dividing by 2. 1/3 means you're dividing by 3, and so on. Obviously, that word divide there is obviously important as well. And dividing equally is often really important for these questions as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a divide question. Or you want to put something in groups. If you had a group of 20, whatever it might be, stones, for example, you want to put them in groups of 4, that would also be a division question as well. So these words might be worth making a note of, particularly ones that you weren't familiar with, to make sure that you don't mix them up. This is the perfect multiple choice question. Like if you see the word sum, it will probably give you one with addition, one with subtraction, one with division, and then one with multiplication. So you got the 4 options. So it's important that we don't mix those ones up. We also looked at things that we can use for this. Obviously, this is the equal sign. What we also see is on word problems is we see the word is. So we'll see something like a number add 5 is 10. That means equals 10. So that's one to watch out for too. Grouping symbols. So some of these we can actually type as well. So certainly parentheses. Oops, if I spell it correctly. That would be a good example. We also have brackets, which I believe are, whoops, I pressed the wrong one. There we go. These would be, whoops, that one's not a bracket. That one's not either. There we go. I think that one's good. It's a little small. We would also have braces, which would be the one that I was getting before. Whoops. That's the one with a shift. There we go. There's braces. And I can't physically type it in, but the square root symbol as well. That would be a good example of one. Someone in my class said radicals. That's good because you can also have cube roots as well. That would be a good example of that. And also absolute value as well, which is basically the lines, the vertical lines. So there are examples of grouping symbols for when we're doing questions like GEMDAS or GEMDAS. So there are ones to know as well. Powers, so that's not quite so easy for me to write down, but certainly the ones which have words that go with them. Squared is the power of 2. And cubed would be power of 3. Oops. Any power above that, then you would just mention that it's to the power of whatever it is. And to show the raised power, I don't think it will actually let me. If I want to put a to the power of 5, I don't think it'll let me do it on here. No, it won't let me do it, unfortunately. This symbol here that you can see, let me type it in, the caret symbol, that denotes that we're using a power in case we can't do subscripts like we're trying to do now. Sorry, superscripts is actually the exponents, because the exponent moves up. Oh, I'm doing it the wrong way around, that way around. Turnaround words, we're actually going to go straight to the end because there's a few of these ones. So let's take a look at those. So if we said 12 added to -4, that actually means that 12 goes at the end of the question. So this word added to is one where it would turn around. So what's at the start is at the end, and what's the end is actually the start. A lot of these turnaround words are often 2 words long. So added to, subtracted from is another good one as well. And for division, divided into as well. 25 divided into 100 is actually 100 divided by 25. We tend to see them more for addition and subtraction though. And the 2 most important ones are more than and less than. So a number more than 7, that as soon as you see the more than, then we know that we actually start with this. So it's actually 7 plus x, not x plus 7 as you might think. And for less than, a number less than 7, once again, those 2 words together, 7 goes to the start, and then this part moves to the end of the question. Now, for more than, technically you can put x plus 7 because 7 plus x and x plus 7 are basically the same quantity. Because when you add 2 numbers, it doesn't matter the order, but it definitely matters for subtraction. So if you don't do it for subtraction, you would definitely have a wrong answer. And just to put this into some context so we can see for you, just to make sure we know the difference between a few things. We see expression on here. Expression is something that doesn't have an equal sign, but has variables. And also there's going to be equations as well, which are things that do have equal sign. So a few little piece of advice here. Identify keywords to determine which operation you're using. So go back to that original list, figure out, is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? And obviously some of them will have more than one of those things as well. Determine if you'll need a variable, like looking for keywords such as a number or an unknown. And you can normally just pick X or N unless it specifies other. And then reread the expression you wrote to check that it matches the original problem. So we have a few examples here to show. So a number, so straight away, we realize that's the variable. Increased by is plus. This one does have 2 words, but this is not one of those turnaround words. Notice we didn't feature that one earlier. So you just have to make sure you know which ones are which. And then by 3, and there's your answer, plus 3. 8 less than a number. So less than I recognize as subtract, but I also recognize it as one of those turnaround words as well. So a number, that's going to be my variable. So it's not 8 minus n, as you might think. It's actually n minus 8. Twice a number plus 4. So twice means we're multiplying by 2. So 2 times a number, so 2 times n, plus 4. We just change it into the symbols, plus 4. And then instead of writing the multiplication symbol, we just write the 2 things next to each other. So when we're doing multiplication problems, We don't put the time symbol. We don't put the dot anymore either. We're just going to write them next to each other. And similarly for division problems, we don't use the divide symbol. We actually just write it as a fraction. So just put top thing over bottom thing. Or you can use the slash symbol if you're trying to enter it on the computer. And there we go. That's exactly what I was talking about. A number divided by 6 decreased by 1. So a number divided by 6, that's your n over 6. So not this really. We won't see this one on the SOL. Decreased by, it is 2 words, but this is not one of the turnaround words. So we do have to be very careful with these again. Decreased by 1. And that finishes it for this video. Certainly go back and look at the earlier slides where you can see some of those key words. Go back also and check, make sure you know exactly which are the turnaround words, because they can definitely be a little bit confusing as well. But I would strongly recommend looking at these words, perhaps writing down some of those ones that you weren't sure of as well.